So good morning, everyone. Namaste to each of you. Thank you for joining me this morning to honor your mind and your body and your spirit. Let's just take a few moments to become present. Find a nice, comfortable seat, either on a blanket or cushion, block, whatever works to elongate your spine, open your chest, opening your heart. And then gently close your eyes and soften your thoughts. Soften your eyes. Soften your shoulders. And soften your heart. Observe your breath as it is, soft and gentle. Breathing life into you with each inhale and relaxation with each exhale. Feel the grace of being present, returning to that awareness again and again. You may open your eyes now. For this morning's intention, you may think of a positive word or phrase to have with you on your mat and perhaps carry with you throughout the day. This morning, for the intention of the class, I'd like to go back to our regularly scheduled program and talk about the third limb of the 8 limbs of yoga. So the third limb is the asanas. And most of us were introduced to yoga by taking a yoga class where we wiggled in and wiggled out of poses. Those poses are asanas. We learned Tadasana, which is mountain pose, Uttanasana, which is forward fold, Virabhadrasana, which are the warrior poses. And you can see there's a suffix on those words of the asanas. But actually, asana is Sanskrit for seated. And the original asana was developed for meditation so that the yogi could be comfortable being seated within oneself. An asana practice would be done either before meditation to prepare the body and the mind to be still for a long time, or it would be done after to relieve your body from stiffness. Fast forward hundreds of years, and we have extracted the asanas out of the 8 limbs of yoga and consider it a standalone practice now. The asana practice is now about keeping us mobile by inviting poses into our body that add to our flexibility, our strength, and our balance. Let's look at the placement of the asanas in the 8 limbs of yoga. So again, it's the third limb, which follows the first limb of the yamas and follows the second limb of the niyamas. The yamas, such as kindness and non-excess, and the niyamas, such as contentment, self-discipline, and self-study, are important guidelines for our asana practice. That's why they come before. Being seated within oneself is still the goal, but let the pose serve you, not you serve the pose. So remember the yamas and niyamas whenever you practice. So for our pranayama, our breathing technique, go back to this Ujjayi breath, which is actually the soundtrack of your asana practice. practice. I mean, there's a lot of pranayamas that have been developed, techniques for helping with other parts of our life, but the Ujjayi is really for doing the poses. And it's you listen to that sound that you make, that Ujjayi Darth Vader sound, so that it quiets the mind and it synchronizes your breath to your movement. And it also increases the oxygen, so allows you to have that flow to help you with your asana poses. So let's, actually, we'll do this once we get on the mat and start doing that. So let me go to the mat. Because I want to talk a little bit more about the asanas. So it's kind of broken out in several different categories. So one category of asanas is the ability. So you have beginner poses, you have what's considered intermediate poses, you have advanced poses, and then you have master poses. Now, when we do our yoga on Saturdays, we're usually in the realm of beginner poses with a few intermediates thrown in. Once in a blue moon, and advanced will be thrown in. The masters is just like the super duper pretzel poses that I think former gymnasts who need challenge kind of go in that direction. But so we would not have in our normal Saturday practice any of the master poses. The next category is the focus. And as I just mentioned, for mobility to occur in our bodies, we need to have flexibility, we need to have strength, and we need to have balance. So that's primarily what those poses are targeted to achieve. And also there's relaxation poses. So the Shavasana at the end of your class is a relaxation pose. And it's just, you know, for the, like if you think of cooking a piece of meat, sorry to you vegetarians, I know there's a couple of you there. So if you cook your meat and they tell you to let your meat rest, allows the juices to kind of go back in. That's, kind of one of the purposes of Shavasana. That relaxation just allows everything to kind of come back together again. And then the types, that's the third category, types of poses. You have seated poses, standing poses, reclining poses, and inversions. And the first three, that's seated, standing, and reclining, have twists and bends to them, so that they basically have twists and bends to them. So what I'm going to do today is when we go through the pose, I'll let you know what the focus of that pose is. Some of them are kind of surprising. I'm basing it off of this app that I've had for years and years called Yoga Studio, and they go through each pose and they categorize it in those ways: beginner, balance, and it's a sitting pose. So they kind of spell it out for me. So let's start with the very first asana, which is what the asana word is intended for, which is seated. And we'll do our meditation using this pose. So the easy pose is with your spine nice and long. If you're on a blanket or a cushion, you may want to scoot so that your knees come down to even with your with your where your hip joint is, you're going to have that come out so that your knees are equal or maybe even a little bit lower. So if you need to boost up your cushions, your blankets to achieve that, either equal or a little bit lower, that's great. And that will actually help to naturally straighten out your back, and that lumbar curve in the lower back will be nice and comfortable. Your head is upright, looking forward, or you can close your eyes. And if you'd like a mudra, you can use the Gyan or Gyan mudra, which is bringing your index finger to your thumb and extending the other three and just lying it on your lap. So let's just take a few moments here and do the meditation, which is exactly what the asanas was intended to work toward, is to have the yogi practice meditation comfortably. So we'll just take a few moments. You may open your eyes now. And we'll start with a few sun breaths, and we'll go back to that Ujjayi Pranayama, the Darth Vader one, which emanates a sound from the back of your throat. So if you're blowing into a mirror, it's, and then if you're inhaling, it's pulling the air through your nose into the back of your throat and creating a sound, almost like an ocean sound or a Darth Vader sound. So with our sun breaths, we can practice that Ujjayi breath. And the intent of having that sound, the soundtrack of your practice, is to be aware if your breath is sounding very shallow, then you know you should back off a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit too much strain going on. And if your breath sounds nice and the sound is coming forward in a pleasant way, then you know you're on track, basically. So bring your fingertips to the sides of your mat, and then Ujjayi breath, inhale. And then Ujjayi breath, exhale. Ujjayi breath, inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. And one last time. Inhale. And exhale. Now we do some twists, and these are considered, the focus is a flexible, being flexible. So if we bring our arms up overhead, turn our body to the left side of the mat, bring our hands down, right hand lands on your left knee, and the left hand lands behind your back, behind your hips. And then just twist to the left, extending your gaze out straight ahead. We'll take 3 deep breaths here. Then inhale, swing your arms up and over and have them land on the right side of the mat, bringing your left hand to your right knee, your right hand behind your hips. Turning your torso toward the left, sending your gaze out straight. And 3 deep breaths here. And then come back to center. We'll do some shoulder shrugs. Now, this is not part of any pose catalog I've ever seen, but we're going to be doing some poses that are going to involve our shoulders. So I just like to warm them up a little bit. So just make nice gentle circles with your shoulders, incorporating your Ujjayi breath. So you inhale deeply up, bring your shoulders up toward your ears, and then exhale, bringing them down, and then reverse the direction. And then come back to a neutral spine. We'll have your right leg seated in front of your left leg instead of having it crossed with a basic seated pose. Have them lie side by side. We're going to do a seated forward fold. So this is also a flexibility pose. So you can just walk your hands out to whatever spot is comfortable. You know, finding that sweet spot for you between effort and relaxation. And that's also the same as saying, let the pose serve you and not you serve the pose. And then just relax here. You know, easy for me to say. And then walk your hands back. And then we'll do that again. And we're going to walk forward. Come to that sweet spot. And then walk your hands over to the right. You can, and then if you're as far as you can go, then just walk them back up. So you're seated upright again. And then switch legs, bringing your left foot in front of your right leg. And we'll do that on the other side. So slowly walk your hands out in front of you for forwards or seated forward fold. Get to that sweet spot and then walk your hands over to the left. And then walk them back up. And then we're going to roll down on the mat. So you can go one vertebrae at a time or just roll down as quickly, the express method. And then extend your legs to the bottom of the mat. We'll come into reclined mountain pose. So have your toes flexed so that they are pointing up to the sky. You're pushing down into your heels as if you're standing on the ground, which activates your legs, making your legs nice and strong. Your knees are gently bent. Shoulder blades are relaxed and roll down into the mat. Your navel's tucked to the spine, bringing your lower back toward the mat. Your gaze is right up to the sky. And a reclined mountain pose is considered a relaxation pose. So it's like Shavasana, but there's more activeness going on. You're not letting your limbs just go loose and relaxed. It's more of an active pose, but it's still considered under the relaxation category. Then we're going to bring our right leg, run the sole of your right foot up your left leg so that it comes to the knee and your legs are in a figure 4 position. Bring your right ankle on top of your left leg, just above the knee, and then slide your left foot up so it comes up toward your chest, and we're going to come into reclined pigeon pose. So your right foot, actually both feet are flexed, toes pointing up to the sky, heels pushing down. And this is a flexibility pose. And then we're going to bring our left foot down to the mat, slide it down to the end of the mat, keeping our right foot on top of our left knee. Send your right arm out to the side in the shape of a T. And then with your left hand, guide your right knee down to the left side of the mat. And this reclined twist is a flexibility pose. And then bring that knee back up, plant it on the mat, bringing both knees up, and hug them to your chest. And then send them back down the mat for mountain pose. So again, we're pointing our toes up to the sky, legs become active, navel's tucked to the spine, bringing our lower back to the mat. Then slide your left sole of your foot up your right leg to the point where it reaches your knee and your legs become a figure 4. And then bring that left ankle on top of the right leg just above the knee. Slide your right foot up, bringing your right leg toward your chest. You can interlace your fingers behind your right leg. Both feet are flexed. Toes are pointing up to the sky. Heels are pushing down and out. And that's a flexibility. And bring your right foot down to the mat and slide it down to the end of the mat, keeping your left foot on top of your right knee. Send your left arm out to the side in the T shape. And with your right hand on your left knee, guide your left knee toward the right side of the mat. Inhale, come back up, bringing both feet to the mat, knees pointing up to the sky, and then bring your knees to your chest for a nice gentle hug. And then from here, we're going to go up to hands and knees. So you can either roll over to the side and come up to hands and knees, or you can place your hands behind your knees and just gently roll on your mat until you come to an upright position. We'll come to tabletop. Our hands and knees. Wrists are right below your shoulders. Knees are right below your hips. Your fingertips are spread out wide, and you're placing your weight into those fingertips, evenly distributed. And you push down gently so that you can create space between your shoulders and your ears. And tabletop's actually considered a balance pose. So I think it's just trying to get yourself equally distributed on your hands and knees to balance weight. And then we're going to go into cat-cows. So we're going to round our back, dropping our head and tailbone down. Then inhale, lifting our head and chest up, tailbone up, arching our back ever so slightly for cow. Exhale for cat, rounding our back, dropping our head and tailbone down. And then arching our back, inhaling, coming up to cow. And both cat and cow poses are considered strength poses, working on our core. Around our back, exhale to cat. Inhale to cow. And you can take a few deep breaths here, synchronizing the cat and the cow to your breaths. Incorporate that Ujjayi breath. And come back to a neutral spine. Keeping your hands where they are, bring your knees together under your torso. We'll extend the right leg up at hip height, keeping your hip bones parallel to the mat. And then send your right arm up for bird dog. And bird dog is a strength pose, good for your core, working on the strength of your core. So inhale, point your toes, exhale, flex your toes, inhale, point your toes, exhale, flex, inhale, point, exhale, flex, inhale, point, exhale, flex, inhale, point, exhale, flex, inhale, point, and exhale, flex. Bring both hand and knee back down. We'll do that on the other side. So bring your left leg up. Again, keep your hip bones parallel to the mat. Send your right arm up. Point your toes for inhale. Flex for exhale. Inhale, point. Exhale, flex. 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 And bring both hand and knee back down. Then we're going to take our left leg and kickstand it out to the left side of the mat, so it's outside the mat. And then extend our right leg all the way down to the bottom of the mat. Left wrist should be under our left shoulder. And we'll do a modified plank pose. So sweep your hand, your right hand from the mat all the way up to the sky. And if it's possible to follow the gaze, follow your hand with your gaze. That's great. And this is a strength move. And exhale, bring the hand back down. Sweep your hand up again, inhaling deeply, following your hand with your gaze, opening your heart, opening your chest. Exhale, bring that back down. And then one last time, sweeping the hand all the way up to the sky, opening your chest, maybe extending your hand back. Really open your chest, opening your heart. And then back down. Come back to tabletop. And we'll do that on the other side. So kickstand your right foot out. Extend your left leg down to the bottom of the mat. Right wrist should be under your right shoulder. Sweep your left hand up from the mat and up to the sky, following it with your gaze. And then sweep it back down to the mat. Sweep your hand up again, following it with your gaze. Maybe bring your hand back a little further, opening your chest even more. And then come back down. And one last time, inhale, sweeping your hand all the way up and back a little bit. And then come back down. Come back down to tabletop. Tuck your toes under. Walk your hands back. We'll come into a squat, which is a strength move. And if you'd like to segue from a strength move to a balance move, keep in that squat position and bring your hands up to Anjali Mudra, prayer pose in front of your heart. And then bring your hands back down, push down into your balls of your feet, and come up to mountain pose. And mountain pose standing up is actually a balance pose. So we're going to send our toes to so that they're facing the long edge of the mat. Lift our toes up and spread them wide, bringing them back down to the mat. Lift the heels up and bring your heels back down so you feel nice and grounded, secure and still in mountain pose. Your legs are active, knees are gently bent, navel's tucked to the spine, just as what we did before, which was a relaxation. Now it's a balance pose. Relax your shoulders, rolling them back, crown of your head lifts up to the sky. And if you question if this is a balance pose, close your eyes and see how still you can be. And you can actually feel your body get a little wobbly. My hairdresser always has me do this, and I'm always amazed, like I'm just standing there with my eyes closed, and yet I'm moving all over the place, making it hard for her to trim my bangs. So inhale, sweeping our hands up overhead, and then forward fold, bending your knees, bringing your palms of your hands down. Forward fold is a flexibility pose. Just check in for a moment. And then inhale, sweeping your hands up your shins to half forward fold, creating a flat back, sending your gaze down and slightly out in front. And then for forward fold, dropping your head, crown of your head down toward the ground. Again, all these are flexibility. Then sweep your hands all the way up overhead and come up on your tippy toes for palm tree. This one's obviously a balance pose. Just wave, sway in the breeze. And then lower your heels, lower your arms all the way down, forward fold, bending your knees, bringing your hands to the mat. Inhale, sweep your hands up your shins, flatten your back out, gaze is long. And then exhale, dropping the crown of your head down toward the mat. And then sweep your hands all the way up overhead. And we'll do side stretches. So bring your right hand down your right thigh, sliding it down to your right knee. This is a flexibility pose. And then come back up again. Sweeping your hand up overhead and bringing your left hand down to your left thigh. Send it down toward your knee, your left knee. Side stretching to the left. Then come back up. Hands meet again up overhead. Bring your right hand down to your right thigh. Slide your right hand down toward your right knee. Side stretch to the right. And lastly, lift your hand up, come both overhead. Bring your left hand down and slide your left hand down toward your left knee for side stretch. And then come back up. Both hands overhead and then forward folds, sweeping down, bending your knees, bring your hands to the mat. Inhale, come back up. Flat back, send your gaze out. And then forward fold, bringing the crown of your head down toward the mat. Really stretching out your hamstrings here. And then sweeping your hands up overhead. Bringing both hands out in front of you. We're going to come into chair pose. So we're going to bend our knees, lower our hips down toward the mat, as if we're about to sit in a chair. Tucking our navel into our spine. That's important to support your lower back. And this is a strength pose. And then inhale, come back up, sweeping your hands out back. Then inhale, sweeping your hands forward, come back down into chair pose. Sweeping your hands back, come back up. And then sweep your hands forward again, coming back down into chair pose, and just hold that for a few moments. And nails tucked to the spine. And then lower our hands down to the mat, bending our knees, sweeping our hands up halfway, half forward fold. Exhale, forward fold, bring the crown of our head down toward the mat. Inhale, sweeping our hands all the way up overhead. Palms come together. Palms come to your heart center, Ujjayi Mudra. And then we'll put our hands on the back side of our hips. Our feet are hip width apart. Shoulders are relaxed and rolled back. Chin is tucked to your chest. And then gently drop your shoulders back for supported back bend, which is a strength move. A couple deep breaths here. And then come back up. We'll come to mountain. So sweeping our hands up overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Bringing our hands down to the mat. We're going to extend both feet to the bottom of the mat for plank. So our wrists are right below our shoulders. Fingers are splayed out, supporting the weight. Navel's tucked to the spine, elevating your hips slightly. Legs are nice and active. The heels are pushing to the back of the mat. Pushing through your heels. You can come gently down to the mat, either knees, chest, chin, or chaturanga. Chaturanga, or both actually. Keep your elbows tucked to your ribs. And that's a strength move. Bring your hands alongside you. Chin rests on the mat. Palms are facing up to the sky. We're going to lift our right leg up for half locust. And focus, be aware of where your hips are. Hips should be both on the mat. And then lower your right leg down. Do that with your left leg. And then back down. And then full locust. We're going to lift both our arms and our legs up off the mat. And this is a strength move. And the strength moves, a lot of the strength moves have to do with strengthening your core. So then bring your hands underneath your shoulders. And we're going to push down, come up into tabletop, and then down to child's pose. And child's pose is a relaxation pose. Although I read recently that, oftentimes in classes they say, well, if you're feeling a little strained, just go into child's pose. And for a lot of people, child's pose is not a relaxing, comfortable pose. So you can make it your own. And then come back up to tabletop. Extend your feet to the bottom of the mat, coming into plank again. And we're going to do side plank. So you can do either the side plank or what we did earlier, which was the modified plank by bringing your left knee down to the mat, kickstanding your foot out and having your other leg extended. So that's modified plank. You can either do that or side plank, which is lift your right leg up, cross it over your left leg, bringing your right toes to the mat, and then twisting so that you come up, lifting your right arm up. Left arm is below your shoulder, and it becomes a balance pose as opposed to a strength pose, but you can feel both in this. And then come back down. Chaturanga, or knees, chest, chin. Come back down to the mat. Gently push up with your fingertips below your shoulders. Push up into cobra, and cobra is a flexible move, about flexibility. And then come up into downward dog from cobra, and that is a strength move. So just pedal out here for a moment in downward dog. Fingertips are splayed open, weight on those, arms straight, chest reaching toward your thighs, hips reaching toward the sky, knees are bent or pedaling. And then walk your feet slowly up to your hands, coming into forward fold, and then sweeping your hands up overhead, and palms come together, and palms come to heart center. Then we'll sweep our hands up overhead again, do that all again on the other side. So forward fold. Bringing your hands down to the mat, extend your feet out to the bottom of the mat, coming into plank. Navel's tucked to the spine, elevating your hips. Gently come down to the mat, chaturanga, or knees, chest, chin. Bringing your arms to the side, chin to the mat. We're going to lift our right leg up. And bring that back down. Lift our left leg up. Bring that back down. And full locust, the strength pose, lift both arms up, both legs up. And then bring that back down. Bring your hands underneath your shoulders. And push up into tabletop. Then lower your hips down for child's pose. Inhale, come back up to tabletop. Extend your feet to the bottom of the mat for plank pose again. And this time you can modify plank on the other side by bringing your right knee down, kickstanding it out, left leg goes to the bottom of the mat, or lifting your left leg up, crossing it over and landing your left toes on the mat, and then twisting into your, lifting your right arm or your left arm up and twisting into side plank. And this pose comes from a strength pose and then come back down, from a strength pose back to a balance pose. And then chaturanga back down to the mat. Push down into the mat to lift up into cobra. That's a flexibility. And then tuck your toes under, come up into downward dog, and pedal out here for a few moments. Nice deep inhale, deep exhale. You may find your Ujjayi breath being a little bit on the shallow side right now. And just wait until you can hear the sound of it come back to normal. Nice even pace, even sound. And then walk your feet up to your hands, coming into forward fold. And then sweeping your hands from the mat all the way up overhead. Bringing your hands together overhead. Palms come to your heart. And then we're going to open to a wide-legged stance. So you turn to whichever side of the mat you'd like, that you feel most comfortable on, so that your torso is facing the long side of the mat. And come into wide-legged stance, which is a balance pose. And your toes should be pointing toward the corners of the mat, heels tucked in 45 degrees, navel tucked into your spine, shoulders are relaxed, and find the stability and balance here. And placing your hands on your hip, bend your knees, and we're gonna lean forward, bringing our head down toward the mat and placing our left hand down on the mat. And then bringing our right hand to meet it. Then sweeping our right hand up to the sky. So we went from a balance pose now to a wide-legged stance twist, which is a flexibility pose. And then bring your right hand back down. Lift your left hand up to the sky, twisting to the left. Legs can be slightly bent or straight, but don't be careful not to lock your knees. And then bring hands back down. Bring your hands back to your hips, knees are bent, and then lift upward, come back up to wide-legged stance. We're gonna point our left toes toward the top of the mat and pivot our back foot. We're gonna come into warrior two. So you may wanna scooch out a little bit here. Knees right over your ankle. Should be able to see your big toe. Back edge of your back foot is nice and snug in the mat. Torso is open to the long side of the mat. We'll sweep our arms up to shoulder height and then slowly turn our gaze. Look at our left fingertips. And the warrior poses are all strength poses. So you feel the strength of your body and the strength of your soul, your spirit. And then we're going to lower our right hand down, lifting our left hand up to reverse warrior. This becomes a flexibility pose. And then come back to warrior two. Straighten our front leg. Going to reach forward and come into triangle pose. So drop your left hand down to your left leg and slide it down to wherever's comfortable, keeping your right arm up. And if you can, send your gaze up to your right hand And now we're in a balance pose. So we went from strength to flexibility to strength to balance. And then bring that right arm up, come back up into wide-legged stance. And point your right toes to the top or bottom of the mat, short edge of the mat. And pivot your back foot and come into warrior two on the other side. Right knee is over your right ankle. You should see your big toe or have your knee pointing toward the second and third toe. Back edge of your foot's nice and snug. Torso's open alongside. Open your arms up to T shape. And then send your gaze gently over to your right fingertips. Then we're in a strength pose. Feel that strength in your legs, in your arms, in your spirit. And then lower your left hand, raising your right hand up to reverse warrior flexibility pose. And then come back to warrior two. And straighten your front leg out. Reach forward as if you're about to grab something off the shelf and come into triangle pose by dropping your right hand down to your right leg, sending your left hand up as your right hand slides down your leg. And that does feel like a flexibility pose, but it's under the category of balance. So it's a bit of both. And then come back up. Come back to wide-legged stance. And you can toe, heel, to come back to mountain pose. How's everyone doing? Okay. So come to bring your pinky toes to the edge of the mat. Then to mountain pose. And bring your hands to heart center. We'll go into wide-legged wide-legged squat. So lowering your hips down toward the mat. You bring your torso between your legs and your elbows rest on the insides of your knees. And you could stay here if you would like a little bit more stretch. You could send your Ujjayi Mudra hands down toward the mat, which will push your elbows and open your knees just a little bit more. And this is a strength pose. So you see a lot of the poses that we've been doing today are strength poses. And then come down, bring your torso or your seat down to the mat, come into staff pose. So staff pose, your legs are active by having your toes point to the ceiling and your heels pushing out, so it activates your legs. Your back is nice and straight and tall, shoulders are rolled back. And staff is also a strength pose. And I'm going to bring our right foot in toward our chest, or toward our knee toward our chest, and then flip the right foot over our left knee so that it lands on the outside of your left knee. And then wrap your left arm around your right knee, sending your right hand in back of you, close to your hips to keep your back nice and straight and long. So this is obviously a flexibility pose. And if you'd like to have a little bit more flexibility, you can bring your left arm on the outside of your right knee and send your gaze over your right shoulder. A little bit more twist. And then come back into staff pose. And we'll do that on the other side. So bring your left foot over your right leg, placing the right your left foot on the outside of your right knee. wrap your right arm around your left leg. Bring your left fingertips to just behind your hips. Keep your back nice, straight and tall. Your long foot should be still flexed, toes pointing up to the ceiling. And again, you can leverage it a little by bringing your elbow to the outside of your left knee and setting your gaze over your left shoulder. And then come back to center. We're going to roll down on our back. So you can roll down express method or one vertebrae at a time. One vertebrae at a time until gravity takes over. Then bring your knees to your chest and give them a nice hug. Maybe rock back and forth. And this is a relaxation pose. And our last pose is another relaxation pose. We're going to send our arms out to the side in a T shape. And you're going to exhale, lowering your knees to the right side of the mat. And then slowly turn your head to the left side to look at your left fingertips. Recline twist. Inhale, roll your head back to center, then inhale, lift your knees back to center. And then exhale, lower your knees to the left side of the mat. And then gently roll your head to the right to look at your right fingertips. Inhale, roll your head back to center. Inhale, lift your knees back to center and extend your legs to the bottom of the mat and prepare for Shavasana. And Shavasana is the real relaxation. You just think of the term let go, just let it all relax, let go of any muscle tension instead of having your legs and arms active. Even if you're like what we were in recline mountain, just relax everything. Let your feet flop open, have your arms out to the side, palms facing up, shoulder blades snug into the mat. And just send deep breaths from your toes on up to your nose, relaxing all the way up and relaxing all the way down. I have a poem this morning by Mary Oliver titled Song for Autumn. In the deep fall, don't you imagine the leaves think how comfortable it would be to touch the earth instead of the nothingness of air and the endless freshets of wind? And don't you think the trees themselves, especially those with mossy, warm caves, begin to think of the birds that will come 6, a dozen, to sleep inside their bodies? And don't you hear the goldenrod whispering goodbye, the everlasting being crowned with the first tuftets of snow? The pond vanishes, and the white field over which the fox runs so quickly brings out its blue shadows. And the wind pumps its bellows. And at evening, especially, the piled firewood shifts a little, longing to be on its way.